Hello, Horror Stories. I'm Michael from Virginia, USA. I've been a truck driver since I was young, and at 57, I'm still in the trucking profession. Throughout my career, I've accumulated countless anecdotes. But the paranormal story I'm about to tell you, although some may doubt its veracity, is completely true, and I have never been able to forget it. Most of my long trips to the south of the country were accompanied by my father-in-law. He had dedicated his whole life to the same profession, and although he was already retired, he told me that he missed driving his truck and being on the road touring the country. So when I had deliveries, I would invite him to come with me, and he would enthusiastically accept. For me, having his company made the trip more enjoyable and comforting. For many years, we traveled the roads from one end of the country to the other. We shared a wide variety of experiences along the way, both positive and challenging, that come with the trade. However, most of those memories are, on the whole, very rewarding. Until one day my father-in-law passed away, I deeply mourned his loss, especially for my wife, but also for myself, as I cherished and respected him as a father. After his passing, I took some vacation days that I had pending to spend time with my wife and children, but I knew that soon I had to return to work. Money was essential for us, and it was the only economic income in the family, so I should return as soon as possible. I remember the first night I went out on the road after his passing. I missed his stories and anecdotes that he used to tell me when I was young. I felt a little strange driving without his company, but life had to go on. I turned on the radio to distract myself so that the trip wouldn't become so tiresome. However, at one point I began to feel that I was not alone. I don't know how to explain that feeling, but I sensed a constant presence by my side. I thought that, having recently lost my father-in-law, it was something normal, although I had never experienced such a real feeling before. Despite that feeling, everything was going smoothly on the road, although the fatigue of the night was beginning to show. The stretch I was on was narrow, surrounded by bush, so I had to be alert. The darkness was intense and the curves were sharp, so I decided to make a stop. I stopped the truck at a rest area we used to use, a safe place where my colleagues and I often stopped for coffee, chat, and rest. I got out of the truck, waved quickly, and the first thing I did was go to the restroom. As I got out, I ran into one of my colleagues whom I hadn't seen in a long time. He came right up to greet me with a hug. I greeted him with a big smile and enthusiasm. It really had been a long time since we had seen each other, and we were good colleagues. But my smile faded immediately when he said, "I knew you were here. I saw your father-in-law in the truck, that's why I came in to greet you, but I have to go now." Surprise and bewilderment came over me. I tried to understand what he had said, but my colleague's words felt like an echo in my mind. I didn't understand how I could have seen my father-in-law in the truck. If he had passed away, it was completely impossible. "My father-in-law?" I asked, my voice trembling and my heart about to burst out of my chest. My colleague confirmed that yes, I had seen him and waved, although it seemed my father-in-law hadn't noticed. I explained that my father-in-law had recently passed away and that there was no way he could have seen him. He looked at me, visibly uncomfortable, and with a nervous smile asked me if I was joking. I replied that it was no joke. In fact, I had returned to work after a few days off to be with my wife after the loss, and her face paled immediately. He looked me straight in the eye, gave me a tight hug, and told me he was sorry, but insisted he had seen my father-in-law. According to him, he was sitting in my truck, in the passenger seat, and I had greeted him with a big smile. They already knew each other from before because of me, so my colleague recognized him right away. I stared at a fixed point as I listened to him, processing what he was telling me. I believed him because it made no sense for him to make up something like that. We had known each other for a long time, and I knew he wouldn't be able to play a bad joke on me. He left and I wanted to rest, but after what my colleague had told me, I couldn't go back to the truck to sleep. The tiredness vanished immediately, and my mind was on the verge of exploding. I bought a coffee and decided to continue on my way, but now I knew that the strange feeling was more real than I had imagined. As much as I loved, and still love, my father-in-law, I found it unsettling to know that his soul seemed to still be present. It gave me a very deep chill. Hours later, something happened that completely transformed my perspective, something so shocking that it is still incomprehensible to me. At about 3 a.m., while I was driving, I began to feel very tired even though I had already had my coffee. And even the loud music could not keep me awake. I knew I would have to pull over with the truck to rest, but I couldn't do it on that route. At one point, I felt my eyes close and I fell asleep for a few seconds. When I opened them, I automatically rolled down the window of the truck so that the air would wake me up. But in a few minutes, I closed my eyes again and fell asleep. Suddenly, I felt a jolt in my body, as if someone was trying to wake me up just before I hit a bus. It was so real. I felt such a strong tug on my shoulders that, as I opened my eyes, I looked around, convinced that I was with someone. My heart was pounding as I took in my surroundings, trying to figure out what had happened. I looked through the windshield and realized that I had narrowly dodged a large bus that was just off the left side of the road. If it hadn't been for that sudden jolt, I might have hit it head-on. Still shaking, I tried to calm myself and keep going. When I pulled myself together, I accelerated out of that road, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had intervened to save me. The vision of my father-in-law in the truck wouldn't go away from my mind. I reached a rest area and parked the truck. I got out to smoke a cigarette and decided to take a short break to clear my head. As I did so, I called my wife to tell her what had happened. Her initial reaction was one of great concern, asking me if I was really okay. I reassured her that I was, but that I was convinced that her father had intervened to save my life. We both ended up crying, sharing the excitement and relief. I decided to rest for a couple of hours before continuing, feeling that the incident had been a warning and that I would not get a second chance. I could not continue on the road with the fatigue and stress I was feeling. So I put on some relaxing music in the background and fell asleep for a couple of hours. When I woke up, I resumed my journey feeling more rested. But the feeling of being accompanied persisted, which disturbed me even though I knew what it was about. I remember when I finished the delivery and returned home, my wife greeted me with a big hug, grateful that I was alive. As she made me some tea, I sat down in the kitchen. I noticed that she had lit a white candle, and she told me that she had written her father's name and placed it under the candle. He explained to me that his father's soul was to rest in peace and that he was going to call a priest to bless him and guide him on his way, that we were to thank him for his presence, but that he should go to rest. We were deeply moved, and that night I could not sleep. The next morning, we went to see a priest and told him everything that had happened. He was touched by our story and blessed the photo we brought him with holy water. From that moment on, I never felt any presence in the truck again. I was relieved for my wife and most of all for myself. I was deeply grateful and will never forget what he did for me. I can find no other explanation for this story, but I do know that we are not alone and that lost souls roam among us everywhere. If you have enjoyed this story, we invite you to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any others. Until next time.